Welcome to We Sing the Bass Electric, a podcast for bass lovers and music enthusiasts of all genres. Join us as we revisit some of the most iconic recordings from different bassists, past and present, discussing behind-the-scene insight and stories that made up some of the most revered albums of our time, all from a bass player's point of view. Now here's your host, international recording artist, Mr. Christian de Mesones, aka Big New York.
From 1971 to 1986, Joe Bouchard created imaginative, eclectic music that solidified his place in the league of rock royalty. As the bassist of the legendary band Blue Oyster Cult, he crafted bass lines that are now firmly cemented in the hearts of loyal fans, with songs like Don't Fear the Reaper, Godzilla, and Burning for You, all staples of classic rock radio. Today, he is a solo recording artist, producing and playing both guitar and bass, which can be heard on his 2020 release, Strange Legends, on the Deco Entertainment label. We Sing the Bass Electric proudly welcomes Mr. Joe Bouchard. Welcome, brother.
That was a great introduction.
All right, that's my little magic potion for you. All right, how old were you when you first started playing the bass?
20. I was late being a bass player because I had been a guitar player and piano player and trumpet player in high school. Mm-hmm. And I got lucky in my first band. I had this guy, Eddie Basnett, tremendous bass player. He started out playing on a regular guitar, and he would tune the E string down to a low C. And that was our bass in our first band, was Eddie playing on this thing. But eventually, and I can remember the day he got his bass guitar, I was coming to rehearsal and I heard this sound coming out of the porch where we rehearsed. I said, holy mackerel, it sounds like a real band. And I still to this day, I think of Eddie when I play my bass lines because there was nobody that was more in the pocket than Eddie. You know, Eddie was so in the pocket, you know, so I never had to, you know, I'd pick up a bass once in a while. So fast forward about 10 years and I'm in college and I'm in my junior year of college. And I was sort of in between bands. I didn't have a band. I was looking around. I have to be in a band. One way or another, I got to be in a band somehow. And I was kind of looking around. So I went down to this local club in the college town where I was at the time, Ithaca College, down in Ithaca, New York. And I saw this band that just blew my mind. They were a jazz Latin band. And I remember going and seeing them. I was like, wow, this is what I was looking for, you know. So come Monday morning, I'm in my music theory class at Ithaca College, and I'm sitting next to the bass player of that great band. So I said to the bass player, hey, man, I really loved your band. Wow. You know, you guys are just so together, the harmonies, the grooves, everything. And he said, well, I'm not happy. I'm leaving. And the light bulb goes off in my head. You know, it's time to make a move.
Wow.
It's time I want his job.
Yeah.
Sam, that was Sam, the bass player, Sam Hayward.
Okay.
Nice guy. I'm still friends with him on Facebook, and we talk about this all the time. He lent me his Hagstrom bass. I don't know if you know Hagstrom bass.
Yes, I do remember them.
Oh, and they had those deadly switches. There was like these little things.
I know.
If you hit your finger on those switches, it would hurt. So I said, I want your job, basically. I knew them, and I used to jam with them on my college breaks. I go down to Long Island, and we meet at the band house, and I'd have like a week or two off. That was unheard of, I'd never had that much time off. But, college breaks usually are pretty long, like spring break, Christmas break. And there's nothing to do up in my hometown. So I would head down to Long Island, where my brother Albert and the guys that became Blue Oyster Cult would be, doing their thing in the band house and getting ready to put out an album on Elektra. So spring of 70, I booked them into a club. They came off. They slept on the couch in my fraternity house. All these hippies. This was such a funny one. All these hippies were sleeping on the couches in the lounge because they didn't want to pay for a room. So I said, sleep in the lounge. Everybody does that. So, and then my straight music fraternity brothers would say, what are all these hippies doing in the lounge? Oh, that's all right. It's just my brother in this band. I had pretty much determined that I was going to not be a music teacher, and I was going to pursue a music career. Definitely, rock stardom was in my future. I'm very naive, of course, and I thought, oh yeah, why not? I graduated, got my bachelor's degree in music education. I graduated from college. Well, I got a summer job working on Martha's Vineyard. I was a piano player in a musical theater. I would play the piano, and that's why I really learned how to read music too. Because when you're desperate to read music, you learn to read music. I mean, I was going to get fired if I couldn't play scores, and these were like orchestra scores, condensed orchestra scores. So you had to make up stuff. And you couldn't stop.
That seems to be a real big factor as far as being a professional.
I mean, you could say musician. You're going to learn to read music, but it's not until you either join a big band or end up in a theater production where reading music is just vital to the gig. So in the middle of that summer, I get a call about 3:00 in the morning from my brother. And he says, hey, we need a bass player. We're going to be touring with Led Zeppelin. So can you get here as soon as you can? I said, well, my contract is until Labor Day, but I'll be there the day after Labor Day. I will be there. So my summer gig is over. I drive from Martha's Vineyard to Long Island in the worst traffic I had ever seen in my life. I'd never seen traffic like this. It took me forever to get there. So I get to the band house. I say, yeah, let's go. Come on. I'm ready for Led Zeppelin tour. We're gonna blow them off the stage. And Albert says, the tour is not happening. What? What? I says, okay. So 4 days later, after finding out the Led Zeppelin tour wasn't going to happen, not with Soft White Underbelly or the name we had at the time, which Stalk Forest Group. Okay. A succession of names that weren't going to live on in infamy. So 4 days later, we get a telegram from Elektra Records, Jack Holzman, and it says, you guys are off the label. We got fired. I'd only been in the band for 4 days. Come on, give me a chance.
Wow.
So that was very disappointing. I didn't know, what's happening here, guys. Come on, can't you get it together to finish the album and, put it out there? Because you guys are great. They're geniuses. Buck Dharma, he was Don Roser back then, but he's a genius. And, and Alan and Eric and my brother, what a team. What a team. There's no reason that we shouldn't have had an album out earlier. But, so I said, okay, we'll go back to the drawing board. We're going to make some money. We're going to go out. We're going to play until we get it together, I felt I was a good fit for the band because I'd worked with Albert for 8 years through junior high school. I know how he plays. So the trick for me was, let's keep him, use what he plays and just enhance it, And then at the same time we're doing that, we got to make Buck Dharma, the greatest guitar player in the world. So I don't feel like I was ever destined for a solo, especially on the bass, trajectory. I would get my little solos in every once in a while, But the main thing was to make the whole band sound cohesive. And a big difference from the earlier days in the 60s when they were doing this sort of jam band music. So we toured around, just the dumpiest places, whatever, any place we could play, in the city park, at clubs in Pennsylvania and upstate New York, and just playing wherever we could to get our sound together. And we met this guy, David Lucas, who had a little studio in New York. It was magical. So David said, I like you guys. Why don't you come in? My jingle studio isn't working on the weekends. I got free time over the weekends. Bring your band in. We'll cut some demos. So we went in there. We cut 4 songs on a demo. So Sandy Perlman was our manager. Sandy took the demos around to record labels, and nobody was interested. They probably had heard the reputation of the band, They didn't get the album done for Elektra. Why should we give them another shot? Blah, 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 blah. So we went back on the road, played clubs, built up our repertoire, And, of course, we play a lot of clubs that say, we don't want you playing any original music. You have to play, other people's music. So we'd slip one in. And we'd say, this is a song by Glenn Campbell. And we play one of our own songs.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah. They don't know.
They don't know. They're drunk.
Yeah, right. Say, here's a song that was played by the Vanilla Fudge. And we play one of our songs. So we did another set of, things were getting desperate. So we did another set of demos, 4 more songs with David Lucas in his jingle studio. It was very nice, and just let us come in there for free. And these next set of demos, Sandy Perlman took them around to the record labels, and they were starting to get some interest. Atlantic was interested, but the most interest came from Columbia. We set up a audition with Clive Davis in the conference room at the CBS building.
Wow.
All of our gear at one end of the room, and there were 7 chairs at the other end of the room. We just played 5 songs as fast and as loud as we could, and they signed us. They signed us to a contract, and then things started getting interesting, because then we really had to deliver the album. It had to be great, and so that was the start of the Blue Oyster Cult, being known. Oh, and the name, of course, we had to come up with a name. We had to come up with a new name. We couldn't be the Soft White Forest
Underbelly. Yeah, I got you.
The soft White Forest Group. Or
did you come up with the name Blue Oyster Cult, or did your brother come up with it?
No, actually, Sandy Perlman.
Oh, okay.
He had written a poem that was part of Imaginos, the grand trilogy, the grand concept record. And Blue Oyster Cult was the shape-shifting aliens that would come to Earth in order to change the direction of history. How come I am just finding out about this today? I didn't know that until after I left the band. I didn't know that until after I left the band. He would make up all this stuff. What's Blue Oyster Cult? Well, it's nothing. It's just, a motorcycle gang. This is a motorcycle gang that went to Oaxaca, Mexico, and saw this double eclipse of the sun, and they got so whacked out, they became Blue Oyster Cult. That was what I was told. But years later, it's really come down to that we were aliens from outer space.
Well, you know what? I got to tell you, first of all, as a bassist, I was always wondering because I looked up some of your videos. Did you ever play with your fingers in the early days? Because mostly I remember you a pick player all the time. All the times I've seen you live.
Yeah, back in college, the first 2 years I played bass, I played only with fingers.
Okay.
The first 2 years, but it wasn't metal. It wasn't anything that was like, fast and frantic, So I probably started playing a little bit of pick and a little bit of fingers when I started the band. Mr. Buck Dharma said, you play better with the pick, why, why, I think real finger players, they develop these really great calluses and even now I played probably 97% of all Blue Oyster Cult bass parts with a pick.
Okay.
Because I know I'm better at it than I am with fingers. But occasionally a song would come out like the song on the Mirrors album, In Thee, where I played with fingers. Okay. Maybe there's one or two others. Like I said, out of 99 songs that we recorded, maybe 2 of them have fingers. I'm better with the pick. I've done a lot of pick studies since then too, so I think I'm hopefully better.
Did you start on round strings immediately? Did you know the difference? Because I remember growing up, first learning the bass, that my first bass was strung with flat wounds, and I tried to get that rock sound in the early days, and I didn't know. And then someone said, I don't know how I learned it, but I finally figured out the difference between round wounds and flat wounds.
Yeah, I think when I first joined Blue Oyster Cult was the time that the Rotosound strings came out.
Mm-hmm.
And Rotosounds just sound great. I still have Rotosounds on my bass now. Mm-hmm. Use them a lot. Mm-hmm. I actually went back to flat wounds, and I was using Pyramid Golds on the Alembic bass, but we can talk about that later.
Okay.
I did use some flat wounds on the Alembic bass. I was just playing the bass today. It's a great bass. It has such a resonant. The wood is just the wood by itself is so resonant. But
well, don't let the cat out of the bag just yet, because that I'm going to be asking you about the legendary Alembic.
But back to the first album and sort of getting our feet solid in the business. Mm-hmm. We went out and we did a tour with the Byrds it was paid for by Columbia Records. The Byrds needed to sort of revitalize themselves because all the original Byrds left, and it was just Roger McGuinn and 3 other guys. Tremendous players, though. And so they set up a tour in New England before our first album came out. And it was us, and opening act was Mahavishnu Orchestra with John McLaughlin.
Oh, my God. Birds of Fire. Birds of Fire was such a great album.
The Interminding Flame.
Yeah.
Iconic.
Yes.
That's like his kind of blue. It's kind of like in that category of like this really shook up the business.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
We had to follow them every night. About 8 shows in a row, and it was like, holy crap!
How did that go over, man? I'd love to be a fly on the wall for those gigs.
The first show they played was their first show ever. I forget which college town it was, somewhere in New England, and they weren't too good. And I'm thinking, hey, we'll just blow these jazz guys off the stage. They're just like, oh, okay, so maybe they got a history with Miles Davis, but kids don't want to see that.
Yeah.
Second night, they came back out. Man, they got a lot better. The third night, they were like,
wow.
We got to follow this. They just killed them. They killed them. And it kept going and going through the whole tour. We were squeezed in the middle. And everybody really wanted to see the Byrds do Mr. Tambourine Man. you know. So it was not a great tour for us. It's not a great tour. But our album wasn't out. Okay. Maybe the people just didn't know our stuff. I think McLaughlin's album did come out. I think it was out. And of course, the Byrds had years of great records. Great singing. And here's another weird thing about that tour. We had 2 different PA systems. The Byrds didn't want to use our PA system. They had their own Dinky Dawson system from Boston, and which sounded like you're sitting in front of your stereo. Ours was kind of like, you know, with all these horns and just a weird setup. But the Byrds came out and decided, wow, you know. So we come off the tour, we're kind of feeling dejected. Like, oh, what are we going to do, man? If we don't get our show together, you know, we're going to end up back being, you know, getting a telegram from the president, you're gone, your history. No, so we went to see a band that I'd never seen before called Alice Cooper. Actually, I saw him the day before we went out on the Byrds tour. I saw him then, but then after we came back, I saw him again. And I'm saying, wow, this is fantastic. This is what we should have been doing, this kind of thing. The audience was really young, you know. The audience were like just barely teenagers, you know, 13, 14, 15, and they had their anthem. I'm 18 and I like it. And they were all singing, I'm 18. You know, they were just, you know, couldn't wait. You know, they were such an energetic young audience.
Well, you caught Alice Cooper at that time where he was with Bob Ezrin, right? Because those first 2 albums, their sound wasn't developed yet. And those Pretties for You, right? So the fact that you got them at I'm 18 on that tour, they're starting to come into who they are as a band at that time. Black Juju, which was a great Dennis Dunaway song, you know.
Sure.
You know.
All of that.
Yeah.
So our manager, Sandy, somehow got through to their management and their agent. And the next thing you know, they had some weird opening acts. They had Dr. John opening their tour. And so let me just tell you this story. So Dr. John, you know, after a couple of days of the tour, Dr. John comes out with a snake. And the Alice Cooper guy says, wait a minute, you can't bring a snake out. Alice has got a snake. And Dr. John says, oh, I've been using snakes for years.
Wow. So I didn't know that. This is really great info.
They kicked him off the tour because he refused to not bring the snake out. I mean,
incredible.
You don't come out with like the headliner's big, you know, thing. Because Alice did bring the snake out all the time. He still does. Yeah. So we end up going to, I think it was Worcester, Mass for the first show. They were trying us out. Other bands they had weren't working for them. And from the first note that we played on stage, it was like crazy. And like the whole audience went nuts. So they wanted us for more shows. And the same time that we're opening these shows and getting a great response, as opposed to the Byrds shows, we started, you know, watching what they're doing, you know, and they had a really, really tight set. I mean, you know, they're all great personalities, you know, Dennis, Neil, they're still my buddies. Glenn, tremendous. Michael wrote the hit songs, and Alice, of course, awesome. And so we're thinking, hey, if they can do that, we can get away with a lot too. You know, I mean, you know, there was no Eric Clapton in their band, say. There was no, you know, and but the strength of all 5 original guys coming together to make it happen, it really inspired us. So that was a great tour. And our album came out started getting a little bit of action. We had Cities on Flame, the first single. And, so they didn't sell a lot of Columbia records of the first album, but it was enough for them to say, yeah, let's make another one with this band. Let's see what they can do, And the next album, Tyranny and Mutation, did a little bit better. The next album after that did a little bit better than the one before that, Secret Treaties. Mm-hmm. And then we did a live album, On Your Feet or On Your Knees, because we were doing so well in the live market. We were doing so well in the live market that let's give the fans a souvenir of what they see, basically what they see in a live Blue Oyster Cult show, and
which by the way is before Kiss Alive, right. Because I believe that I bought that album and I did see you open for Kiss at Nassau Coliseum, your hometown.
Oh yeah.
And New Year's Eve, 1975. I actually, I saved the confetti, man. I still got the confetti in a little saran wrap or something, man, But yeah, it was a triple bill with another great rock bass player, Kenny, what's his name? Kenny Aronson.
Kenny Aronson, yeah.
Yeah, he was playing with Leslie West Band.
Leslie West.
Right, that's right. So they opened and you came on. And then, of course, Kiss. And, I'm 14 years old and I'm in 9th grade and it's my first concert and my dad drives me in the snow to Nassau Coliseum. I mean, I can't begin to tell you.
I forgot that Kenny Aronson played with Leslie West.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known. He's a good friend of mine. We never talk about that one.
Yeah.
But of course, I remember that show. It was great,
Yeah.
And Leslie West ended up being a good friend of mine, too. And actually asked me to play some gigs with him. I had to turn him down because I had something else going on. But that would have been fun. I played with Leslie. We played with Leslie in a workshop. It was my brother and I. We became Mountain for 2 songs.
Oh wow! What year? What was this? What year was this?
It was in the 90s. It was in the 90s. I was working at the National Guitar Workshop and. Leslie was the guest that came in, and I said, "Hey, get my brother up there, and we'll play Mississippi Queen." So
I'll tell you, the band's breakthrough was really, to me, the 1976 release of Agents of Fortune, to which you contributed the solo-written song "Morning Final." Tell us a little bit about what it was like to write and present an independent song when you were part of such a collaborative band.
Okay, about that time. We all got tape recorders at home. We could finally afford a tape recorder at home, and we all, I bought a piano too, because I hadn't had a piano since college, and I started playing, going back and playing arpeggios on the piano, and. That song lyrically was influenced by, I stayed at Patti Smith's apartment. Her apartment was right next to the Chelsea Hotel, and I stayed a couple of nights at the Chelsea. I get up, I read the newspaper in the morning. It's the Morning Final. It's the name of the newspaper. Mm. And there's a story about a guy that was killed in the subway. And then I read, wait a minute, it's like 100 feet from where I'm sleeping. That's where it happened. It happened right there in the subway. So that, of course, that started the wheels turning. I said, well, who knows? So I guess I took notes right out of the newspaper and put them into my notebook. So I'm sitting at my piano and I'm knocking out this riff, and that one's written all on piano. And I made a little cassette demo. We would have these rehearsals where everybody would bring their cassette demos in, and of course Donald's cassette demos were stunning. I mean, compared to ours, were like really crude. But, you know, we try to be fair and balanced, and balanced, and try to give everybody a good shot, you know. And also, there was a demand from Columbia Records. You got to come up with a whole new album. You have, you know, the first album, we pieced together a couple of things from the 60s, the earlier days, the Softwood Underbelly days, pieced together a little thing. As we got touring, we didn't have that luxury of that time. So we had to come up with new material every year. And so we'd probably listen to about 20, 30 songs and try to pick the best 10 or 12 out of those. And I got to give my brother credit. He was always saying, oh, we should do Joe's song here. You know, this Morning Final song, that could be really good. When brought it into the studio. That one is kind of interesting because Alan Lanier, I was going to play piano on it because I'd written the piano part. And so Alan said, you want to, you know, why don't you play? I asked Alan, would you play bass on this? And I'll play piano and we'll see what happens, you know.
It's got a cool flavor. The piano lick almost reminds me of I Love the Dead on Alice Cooper. That dun, 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 you know, and the intro, I wouldn't have known that you wrote the intro on piano because it sounds so guitar-like, dun, 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 you know, with the guitar melodies. So that's interesting to me that you wrote it and then you were able to show it to the band and they digested it correctly with all the parts. And
I did play that melody that Donald plays at the beginning on my demo. In the studio, I played the Steinway Grand. And then I came back in and one of the producers said, why don't you play electric piano? So it's actually, that piano is a combination of a Fender Rhodes and a Steinway. It's a great sound, you know. So, but that was, that time we were working at the record plant. The record plant was a tremendous studio. Jimi Hendrix worked there.
Yeah.
John Lennon worked there. Aerosmith worked there. Kiss worked there. You know, all the it was just it had a magic about it, you know. And that was a fun place to record. And they put all the magic together in the fade out, and Eric comes in and does his Newsboy, and then it cuts right to the next song, which is Alan's song, where I'm playing the bass. So you hear the difference between Alan playing the bass and me playing the bass, just like in that one splice. Just wow. So yeah, so we definitely weave together the elements, you know, and not to mention, you know, the Reaper and the cowbell, and you know, one of my favorites is This Ain't the Summer of Love. We just kick it off right there, and then doesn't give up.
So now we're going to follow up with your next album, which, in my opinion, you know, Spectres really was the pinnacle of Blue Oyster Cult's popularity, just because of the single Godzilla, you know, which put you out there in the spotlight. You know, you influenced a whole generation of young bass players with just 2 bars of music. I mean, how does it feel to know you have written and performed something so impactful?
You know, I don't know. Okay.
Come on, man. Come on, Joe. Come on. You mean to tell me that you didn't have young kids coming up to you, young bass players, like, how did you play that lick? What is that? Is that a chord? You know, all those questions.
Well, I was very influenced by Stanley Clarke as a bass player.
Me too.
And Dennis Dunaway took me to New Haven to see Stanley Clarke. It was incredible.
You talking about School Days?
Yeah, School Days.
Around that time.
I wore
big
out
record.
School Days.
Me too.
I wore out School Days. So I went out and I got one of his basses. I got one of those Alembic basses.
I imagined in my mind that you were walking on 48th Street in New York City, and you went to Manny's, and there was this Alembic hanging up on the wall, and the salesman took it down and says, Joe, you got to check this bass. I mean, that's what I'm thinking in my mind. But
you know, we had the Reaper came out It was a big hit. We started seeing a lot of people at our shows. So we were on tour in California. They came to us with the Alembic bass. We were in Northern California, and they came to us with the Alembic bass. And I said, yeah, I got to have this. I got to have it. Ricky Ryer, I think, pretty much negotiated this bass for me. And then we went into the studio to cut the Spectres album. All of Spectres is played on that Alembic bass. It's a beast. It's a beast. I mean, you got to really have big arms, and it's heavy. But I definitely set it up in stereo, and I had the high speakers and the low speakers. It was a huge setup. Boy, I feel sorry for our roadies. They had to carry so much stuff. I didn't touch an amp for 10 years.
You know what, though? The sound was pretty incredible.
It was.
You know what? I'm interested to know, during that time, what was your rig like? I mean, did you have 10s, 18s, 15s? Did you tri-amp it? Did you bi-amp it? Did you do any of that stuff?
I had a Furman preamp, I think. I had different preamps. I'm not exactly sure. Furman is one name I remember. And I would use Crown amps because they were the most powerful, cleanest. And I had 4 folded horn cabinets with 15-inch speakers, 4 of those. And then I would have 8 12s, like basically two Marshall cabinets. And that was my rig for most of the heyday of the band. And I didn't really do much with the stereo. I just put it up there. I liked the way it sounded. It was a powerful thing. I mean, nowadays people have a little, they have a little box in the back and nothing is on stage. Or if they have anything on stage, it's empty cabinets, it's fake fronts. I saw, I think it was Bad Company that had hologram cabinets.
I've never seen that before.
I thought I was hallucinating. It was holograms. It was hologram cabinets.
Wow, that's original. Well, so you still have that. You still have that bass, as you were saying earlier.
I do have that bass. Yes.
Thank God. Don't sell it, please. Or if you do, sell it to me, man, please. Leave it in your will, man, please.
Well, you're going to need 3 guys to carry it around.
I play an Alembic 6-string. I've been playing Alembic for like 20 years. Yeah, I know. It's a heavy bass.
Is it a long scale?
It's a long scale. It's probably, and as a matter of fact, I just lightened the gauge. But if you look at the picture of me playing that bass, it looks so even to my big frame of a body compared to, I play another bass, a Warwick thumb bass, which is a long scale, but it certainly does. It looks more like a toothbrush. Right. It doesn't look, doesn't look like a long scale. So,
my Alembic is definitely long, and so the spacing of the frets is really wide too. So you really have to extend, But once you get on tour, your hands develop these gorilla hand. You get used to it. Maybe 2 or 3 days on the road and your hands just fall into place on that bass. When we were playing, we'd do 5-6 shows a week. And, by the 3rd night, your hand just fits right in those big wide stretches. And also the nice thing about that Alembic bass, it had, at least mine has a sound like no other. And when I was playing in a stadium, if we were doing a stadium, the bass, it was the best stadium bass ever. There was something about the way the high end and the mid range would just cut through a state. It could be the most echoey hockey rink, and you played that Alembic bass and you heard every note. Not only did you feel it inside, but you heard every note. And the other basses, if you take a Fender bass, you're just going to sound like mush, or the Music Man, which was my last bass that I really got into. That that cuts through pretty well. But there was just something about that Alembic bass. If you were being lucky enough to play in a stadium or a big hockey rink or something, or the Madison Square Garden, it would cut through. It just sounded beautiful.
Yeah, I saw John Entwistle at Shea Stadium playing an Alembic, and his tone came right out. I mean, I think he was playing the Explorer Alembic. I'm not sure if he played an 8-string. I know he had one, but I was too young, man. I don't remember, but I do remember the sound. I remember him coming out, especially on that tune, Eminence Front. That was the tour back then. The Clash opened up for the Who at Shea Stadium, and I
saw them I saw that same show in Buffalo.
Oh, you did?
It was great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got to go on stage. Every note that Pete Townsend played was like, the audience was just, they were like godlike. they had every note, even if it was as simple as 2-3 notes, they would go nuts.
I know.
I mean, they loved the whole thing. They loved the songs and all of that.
This concludes part 1 of our conversation with Joe Bouchard. Tune in to part 2, where you'll learn some more information not only about Blue Oyster Cult, but his latest release, Strange Legends, right here on We Sing the Bass Electric.